Some people love to talk about hate speech, don't they? Greens leader Richard Di Natale is one of them. I've shown you before how Di Natale and the Greens have been spruiking new laws that would outlaw what he calls hate speech. But they sound much more like laws to silence his critics.
We're going to make sure that we've got laws that regulate our media, so that if people like Andrew Bolt and Alan Jones and Chris Kenny, and I could go on and on and on, if they want to use hate speech to divide the community, then they're going to be held to account for that hate speech.
So, I hear you wonder, how does the Greens leader measure up on hate? Well, we know that one of his candidates in the Northern Territory, George Hanna, circulated a racist post against Indigenous Coalition candidate Jacinta Price, calling her a coconut, a racially offensive term suggesting she is brown on the outside but white on the inside. Di Natale apparently didn't think that was hateful. He kept Hanna in place and asked the voters of Lingiari to vote for him. Nice. This is the trouble with those who love to talk about hate speech. They ignore it on their own side. Remember Sarah Saylor, who hardly raised an eyebrow on ABC TV's The Drum when she suggested some politicians shouldn't even exist.
We are in a system that is quite literally propped up and enabled and aided and abetted by politicians and media shock jocks that have made a living, a political career out of Islamophobia and out of inciting, hatred and white supremacist views against marginalized communities. And look no further than Scott Morrison, Prime Minister Morrison's response after Burke Street last year, or Tony Abbott and his Team Australia, or just his existence altogether, I'll say, is offensive.
Yep, that sure is some way to argue against inciting hatred against others by saying your political enemy's existence is offensive. Saylor happens to be a director of far-left activist group Get Up. You'll remember the commercial they ran during the election campaign against Tony Abbott, the one they had to drop because it showed Abbott, the lifesaver, refusing to rescue someone drowning.
Help! Help! Tony! Someone's drowning!
Look, I think you'll find that the science isn't settled on that.
What? Do something!
Why should we act first? I think I've given you the response you deserve.
Authorised by Paul Lusting, Get Up Limited, Sydney.
Talk to us again about hate speech, Sarah. Then there's another ABC favourite, commentator Clementine Ford, who has rightly complained about the hate directed at her. The trouble for Ford, of course, is that she seemed... just have a look at this clip of her complaining about the hatred directed at her.
Try not to spend too much time thinking about what motivates trolls, because I essentially feel like they're just deeply unhappy people who get off on this kind of behaviour.
Yeah, but Ford seems to be one of these deeply unhappy people herself. She lashed out at my colleague Rowan effing Dean during the campaign and accused Prime Minister Scott Morrison of being an effing fraud and that his government kills children. F you, she says. Again, that's really nice, isn't it? Ford has thrown the C word about online too, including referring to columnist Miranda Devine as an effing C. She even doubled down and used the same language on television.
Some rather nasty things you've called Miranda Devine as well, profanities that I won't say on this programme.
I called her
yeah.
Whoa, there it is.
I think
The ABC apologised to Devine, and Ford has dabbled in racism too. She said that no matter how hard my Muslim-raised Iranian colleague Rita Panahi tries, she'll never be a white man. And here I was thinking that the left were all about gender fluidity. Just imagine if a male commentator, say a bald, middle-aged, bearded, right-of-centre one, made some of these comments. Perhaps they'd lose their job. Do you think? Or would they be invited onto the ABC to mouth more of the same? And how about this? Van Badham, another ABC favourite who is active in the Journalists' Union, she rightly took exception to this Sunshine Coast Daily front page. In the wake of the federal election result, it had Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk in gun sights and shouted, "Anna, you're next." tasteless for sure. And Van Batten tweeted, "Holy God." Yet a few years back, she didn't seem to be so fussy, tweeting a photoshopped image of George Brandis hanging by a noose and saying it was one of the best things on the internet. Again, that's very nice, isn't it? That's the left and hate speech. When they rail against it, they mean the speech they hate, not the hate they preach.